Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to my wonderful creative writing students. So, we are wrapping up with our fiction writing and we are going to move on into poetry writing. I'm not going to require specific poetry types to be written, but I am going to go over a few different poetic forms and a couple examples if I can fit them onto the screen because some of these are very long examples. But I want you to consider maybe using one or two of these in your own writing and branching out from just the normal poetry writing that you may be used to. So, the first one I want to talk about is the haiku. You're probably very familiar with these, hopefully. A haiku is just a 3-line poem, and 3 lines means it's a terse set. Lines 1 through 5, not lines 1 through 5. Line 1 is only 5 syllables. So when you say it, it's 5 syllables long. Da 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 da. And that's syllables, and is in how many syllables are in the word. So, how is a 1-syllable word? How. That way. Line 2 is 7 syllables, so add 2 more. And then line 3 is 5 syllables again. So a haiku is a 5-7-5 poem. No rhyme scheme is required for haikus. You're trying to evoke a mood with it. Sometimes haikus are written very specifically about nature, so you can always look to nature to write haikus. I've listed some very famous haiku writers on here for you. If you want to look them up, that's totally up to you. But I'll give you an example of a haiku, and I'll kind of work through the 5-7-5 while we do this. So the Old Pond by Matsuo Basho says, "An old silent pond, a frog jumps into the pond. Splash, silence again." So if you read that off, it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, because silent is 2 syllables. Silent, a frog jumps into the pond. That's 7. Splash, silence again. So you see how that works. Haikus are really short. They're easy to write to an extent. You just have to make sure you can get that 5-7-5. There is some people will play with the form because they have made mention that because haikus tend to come from Japanese writing, that the 5-7-5 in Western writing would not really count or make sense because syllables in Japanese are very different. So you can play with the form a little bit, but just remember, there is no specifics for this. You're wanting to get that mood or show a little picture in a very, very short writing. The next one that we have is free verse. This is probably the one that most of you are used to writing and you're probably going to write, which is totally fine. Free verse is however many lines are needed for it. There's no specifics, nothing to do with that. Rhyme, if you want to have a rhyme scheme, you can. It's not required though. The usual subject of free verse is your choice. There's so many different poems and poets that write in free verse, and it is probably the most common one that you have seen outside of some very specific writing styles. I fully expect that you guys will be writing a lot in free verse, which is totally fine. Nothing wrong with that. You can look up poems by people like Walt Whitman or E.E. Cummings. Langston Hughes is a wonderful free verse writer, as is T.S. Eliot, to look at theirs. Usually people who engage in free verse writing are writing about very specific instances in their life though. So that's something you may want to consider. If you want to write about a very specific thing that happens, you can use free verse to do that, to address that issue. And I will make note, E.E. Cummings spells their name with lowercase. There is no uppercasing. Cummings also writes everything in lowercase, and that is a stylistic choice that Cummings makes in their writing. So another little a free verse one you can look at is Fog by Carl Sandburg. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent haunches and then moves on. Short, sweet, to the point. Then we have the sonnet. This is what you have probably been introduced to in school in some way. There are 4 types of sonnets that people generally discuss. Traditionally, sonnets are 14 lines and they deal with love as a concept. The specific rhyme scheme for each sonnet is different. So the originator of sonnets was Petrarch, and Petrarchan sonnets go by an ABBA, ABBA, CDE, CDE rhyme scheme. Or instead of CDE, you can do CDC, CDC. That means that the first 4 lines A and A are line 1 and 4, and they rhyme. B and B are 2 and 3, and they rhyme. The second stanza is lines 5 and 9, no, 5 and 8 rhyme, sorry, math, and then lines 6 and 7 rhyme. And then C, D, E means those three don't rhyme, and then you have them rhyming with C, D, E. Shakespearean is a little different in that it does A, B, A, B, C, D, C, D, E, F, E, F, G, G. So it breaks it down into every single one is different. Then you have Spenserian, which is A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C, C, D, C, D, and then E, E. Again, different writings. Most of the ones that you've probably read are Shakespearean sonnets. That's what you're usually introduced to in school. Miltonic sonnets are the same as Shakespeare, except the content is not about love, but about internal struggle or conflict. Shakespeare kind of switched it up a little bit, and he dealt with a few more issues than love. But sonnets are wonderful to write about when you want to write about love. And they're beautiful to look at. I highly suggest reading an example of each sonnet to look them up. They are longer, 14 lines. I can't stick them on this because it would be very tiny print. But look up each one of them and kind of see what their rhyme scheme and how it works is. A lot of the times with Shakespearean writing, there is what is called iambic pentameter. That's the meter that he's using. Don't struggle and worry about that kind of thing. I'm not requiring that. If you decide you're going to write like a Shakespearean rhyme scheme sonnet, I'm not going to say, well, it's not iambic pentameter, so don't worry too much about that. That's a little bit more advanced writing stuff, and we're not going to delve into that currently. Then we have what is called a villanelle. That is a 19-line poem. There are 5 stanzas of 3 lines, which is a tercet, so that's the first 15 lines. And then the final stanza is of 4 lines, which is a quatrain. There are only 2 rhyming sounds in the entire poem. So line 1 is repeated in 6, 12, and 18. So your first line will rhyme and match line 6, line 12, and line 18. Line 3 is going to rhyme and match and be repeated in 9, 15, and 19. That doesn't mean the same word. It just means that the word has to rhyme with the ending word of the main line. It sounds super easy and simple, but you've got to work ways on getting that rhyme scheme in. You can look up people like Edwin Arlington Robinson and William Ernest Henley for villanelles. There's some other villanelle writers, but that is there. I will make note that the rhyming sounds are noted here on this. It is ABA, 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 ABAA. So you have to remember line 1 is repeated in line 6, line 12, and line 18. Okay? Line 3 is repeated in 9, 15, and 19. So when you're looking at it, and this is written ABA, but it would be ABA, not ABA across the way. But I wrote it this way so you can kind of see the scheme of it. But remember that if you decide you want to do a villanelle, you do have to have that internal rhyming scheme. These all have to rhyme here, but these words specifically on those specific line 1 and line 3 have to rhyme specifically with their corresponding lines to be a villanelle. Sounds easy. It is a little more difficult to write, though. Then you have a limerick. These are more fun poems to write. They're 5-line poems. It's an AABBA rhyme scheme. You may have seen limericks in school. You may have seen them written by people. They're very, very funny. Occasionally they are rude poems or crude poems, but they're meant to be that way. There are many limerick writers. Algernon Charles Swinburne, Oliver Wendell Holmes Sr., Norman Douglas have all written limericks. When you're writing a limerick, though, lines 1, 2, and 5 are longer in length than 3 and 4. So they're going to be longer written lines than 3 and 4. So here's an example of it by Edward Lear. There was an old man with a beard who said, "It is just as I feared. 2 owls and a hen, 4 larks and a wren have all built their nests in my beard." It's just funny. Little ha-ha funny rhyming poem. You can do that if you would like. I highly encourage it as well. They're just fun to write and they're goofy. Then you have odes. There are no set lines or stanzas, no set rhyme scheme within an ode. An ode generally is praising a person, event, or thing, usually short in length. Sometimes they're going to be longer. John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, William Wordsworth, and Alan Taint are all people who have written odes. You can look them up. Theirs are really long. And a lot of times when people write odes, they very intentionally title it an ode to, so you know what it's about. Then you have elegies. This may be something that you want to look into. An elegy has no set line length to it and no set rhyme scheme. So similar to free verse, no set line length, no set rhyme scheme. The subject, though, is very specific and you're dealing with death. You usually write elegies about someone who has passed, so it is a great way to work through that. W.H. Auden, John Milton, Alfred Lord Tennyson, and Emily Dickinson are all famous elegy writers. Milton, if you recall, we just talked about Miltonic sonnets. That's the Milton they're talking about. But if you want to engage in that, you can. If you want to look specifically at one that doesn't talk about the death of somebody, but is talking about death personified, Emily Dickinson's Because I Could Not Stop for Death is an amazing poem to look at. That is an elegy about death itself. And it's about the narrator dying. And then we have ballads. Last but not least, the beautiful ballad. A ballad is 4 lines. 4 lines means it's a quatrain. And it is an ABAB rhyme scheme or ABCB rhyme scheme. Just depends. The ballad, though, can be modified to suit your needs, so it does not have to be 4 lines. But you do have to follow that first set of rhyme scheme, the ABAB or ABCB, somewhere. Gwendolyn Brooks, Robert Southey, Robert Burns are amazing to look at for ballads. They are usually longer than the 4 lines, but they will have that rhyme scheme in there somewhere. A lot of the times, ballads are now songs, and people will use songwriting as ballads. So keep that in mind whenever you're writing your own poems. I know you guys are probably going to default to free verse, but I would love to see you moving beyond and maybe trying a couple of these. There's a lot of different types of poems, but these are the most common and the easiest to write. I look forward to reading your poems, guys, and seeing what you do. Have a great day. Bye.